on McConnell, Shelby, Larry Moore, Curley, and think that these people are smarter than they are, and they know what's best for you. So thinking adults, the 15% we believe are going to be very vocal and responsible for changing the complexion of this country. In 20 years, we forecast it will look radically different than it does today.
Let's move on to the economy, Gerald, because virtually all economists, well over 90%, are saying the U.S. is out of this recession here in the third quarter, and others in government are saying we are in recovery. What is really happening here with the economy, Gerald?
Well, again, 90%, I'd say about 98% of them were wrong in calling the recession. And you could go over the facts and the data, name the names, and they didn't call it. And by the way, we were just going over some back trends journals, Eric. In 2004, we wrote that in 2007, America would enter, quote, the Great Recession, which they're calling it now. So the ones that didn't see it happen are now saying what's going to happen next. The stimulus programs are working. They're stimulating the economy, just like any drug on the market stimulates a false feeling of getting rid of the symptoms, but not attacking the cause. And stimulus is being dumped on the world marketplace worldwide. And so it's taking its course. It's papering over the cracks. Again, this is no recovery. It's a cover-up. They've covered up the great collapse of '09 that happened in March of 2009 when the stock market sunk to, about 6,600. It collapsed. It's over. The only thing they're doing is they're propping it up with pillars of paper money, and it's going to run out. What's going to happen when the stimulus money runs out? What do you do for Act 2?
What about this chasm, Gerald, between rich and poor in the United States, which is the largest of any industrialized nation? How does that play into this second American Revolution you describe?
Well, it plays into it very big in the sense that we're looking at, as we're talking about a revolution, we're also talking about a renaissance. And let me explain why. A renaissance is a rebirth, a rediscovery. In Italy, during the height of the Renaissance, they would say alle romana e all'antica, in the manner of the Romans and the ancients, to describe the quality of their work. So when was America at its greatest? Well, the facts don't lie. This isn't hyperbole. When we didn't put our faith in Wall Street, but we had all our money and all our business on Main Street. When we didn't have Walmarts, we had mom and pops. We weren't slaves to factory farms or captive. We had family farms. And that's the model that worked the best. And for us to regain our strength, that's what we have to go back to. Because, as you mentioned, the gulf between the rich and the poor is now the widest of any of the industrialized nations. When you go back to Main Street, mom and pop and family farm, we were, Eric, the most egalitarian nation on earth and the envy of the world. And that's the model we believe that we need to put back into place, and that's going to be part of the Renaissance.
Is this an even greater trend, then, that is in work here? It's like a work in progress, this chasm between rich and poor, so that citizens will eventually just be indentured servants, and you'll have the royalty and peasants. I mean, is that the bottom line?
Well, that's the way they're going now. Look at the sectors. Look at banking. I mean, who takes most of the business when you add it up? What is it, Wells Fargo, J.P. Morgan, Bank of America, Citigroup? Go into agriculture and food processing. Who do you have out there? Cargill, Tyson. Few companies are controlling all of the business. We've gone from the greatest entrepreneurial empire in the world to one that Mussolini would have called, a fascist country, where we have a merger of state and corporate powers. They're hand in glove. Who would have thought that in 1 year between Bush and Obama, we'd be owning companies like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and AIG and General Motors, and that we'd be giving taxpayer trillions to bail out these criminal operations that I love it, they call them investment banks. How about brokerage firms that gamble? What investment banks? Oh, and then they make them banks, holding companies, to give them more of our money when they get into trouble. So, I mean, it's just a charade out there, using language and the cover of Washington to continue to rob the people blind, make the gap between the rich and the poor wider, and throw people and become indentured servants.
I'm just curious. I'm going to move to a different topic here very quickly, and we'll come back. But I know you're heavy into gold, and I know you don't give out financial advice, so I just want to talk about this in a roundabout way. But GATA, obviously, I'm sure you're familiar with, has been fighting against the Federal Reserve and some of these agencies to disclose information about what it is that they're doing with what I think GATA considers the U.S. citizens' gold and not the Fed's gold. And they've been denying that they've had any type of gold swaps with other foreign countries or swaps in general. And it was just disclosed to GATA that they do, in fact, have these swaps now. They're not saying that they've utilized them or done anything with our gold, but doesn't it strike you as odd, Gerald, that, again, we have this Federal Reserve, which isn't part of the government in any way, and could be foreign-owned or owned by European tentacles as well as other wealthy families and other elite banking institutions, that could take the United States citizens' gold and possibly swap it or sell it off to surreptitiously try to artificially support a strong dollar policy globally? Doesn't that strike you as odd?
Well, it doesn't strike me as odd. It strikes me as typical. They'll do anything they can, schemes undreamed of, to rob the people blind. And it's perfectly logical that they're going to continue to do it. Let's watch the G20 meeting that began on September 24th. That we may see some upward movement, for example, on the dollar and downward pressure on gold as a result of that, because it's out of control. And we saw gold move well over $1,000 an ounce, and then as soon as the G20 met, gold started moving back under the $1,000 mark and losing traction against the euro and other key currencies. So the whole world, financiers, this is an engine that's out of control, and they're going to do everything that they can to manipulate it back in their favor. But any type of manipulations they do are only going to be temporary.
I'm curious, Gerald, about your thoughts when you heard earlier this year, because I know that you follow this, some comments from Department of Homeland Security leader Janet Napolitano when she described veterans or returning soldiers as right-wing terrorists. Because my spouse, Elizabeth's father, did 3 tours of duty in Vietnam and was captured on his 3rd tour of duty and had his back broken in a prisoner of war camp. And I can tell you, Gerald, these veterans are some of the most patriotic people in this country. What were your thoughts when you heard Janet describe these people as potential terrorists? Because I was outraged.
The same thoughts I had when President Bush was in office, when they would say you're either for us or against us, and that we had to keep a very low profile. And we're political atheists. We just call a spade a spade. And if it upsets someone, hey, we're not saying you have to believe what we say, but we don't have to believe what you say either. We're not, our motto at the Trends Research Institute is think for yourself. So this is the tactic that governments use continually. When in time of crisis, what they do is they silence the opposition while they rally the other people around them in the arena of fear. Look what Bush did, with 9/11, how they kept playing the fear card. He went from a president that was lower in the polls 9 months into his presidency as Obama is, about the same thing, I believe, or a little lower, right around the same level. And then 9/11 came, and everybody rallied around them. They'll do the same thing if something happens with Obama. So this is just a typical government tactic, whether they do it in Nazi Germany or the USA.
But, Gerald, as you know, you don't get on either side of the political spectrum. That's just not a place that you go. And you stay neutral. You'll be critical of both sides for a variety of reasons. But the bottom line is they could take somebody like a Gerald Celente